The rain hammered against the windows of our small cottage in the Cotswolds, mimicking the tempest brewing inside me. For 20 years, Elsie and I had built a life here, a quiet, comfortable existence filled with Sunday roasts, garden walks, and the comfortable silence of shared history. I, Barnaby, a simple IT consultant, had always considered myself a lucky man. Elsie, with her fiery red hair and infectious laugh, was my anchor, my confidant, the very air I breathed. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared subtly, a hairline fracture in the facade of our perfect life. Elsie, always meticulous about her schedule, started having late nights at the pottery studio. She had always enjoyed her pottery, a creative outlet from her demanding job as a primary school teacher, but these late nights were different. She became evasive when I asked about them, her usual bubbly explanations replaced with curt replies and a dismissive wave of her hand. "Just catching up on some commissions, Barnaby. Don't fuss," she'd say, her eyes darting away from mine. I brushed it off initially. Elsie was a hard worker, dedicated to her craft, but the late nights became more frequent, stretching into weeks, then months. The comfortable silence between us transformed into a tense, unspoken distance. She stopped initiating our evening walks, preferring to unwind with a glass of wine and her phone, her fingers flying across the screen with a secretive smile. And came the phone calls. Whispered conversations in the hallway abruptly cut short when I entered the room. "Wrong number," she'd claim, her cheeks flushed, her voice a little too high-pitched. I started to feel a knot of unease tighten in my stomach, a cold dread that whispered of something amiss. I tried to talk to her to bridge the growing gap between us, but she remained distant, unreachable. "You're imagining things, Barnaby," she'd say, her eyes accusing. "You're being paranoid." I hated that word, paranoid. It made me feel small, insecure, like I was the one at fault for questioning her. But the unease persisted, a nagging itch I couldn't scratch. One evening, while Elsie was supposedly at her pottery studio, I decided to surprise her. I packed a thermos of hot chocolate and drove the familiar route to the studio, picturing her face lighting up with surprise. But when I arrived, the studio was dark, the windows shuttered. A small sign on the door read, "Closed for renovations." My heart pounded in my chest. Renovations. Elsie hadn't mentioned anything about renovations. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, it's Elsie. I can't get to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you." Her cheerful, pre-recorded message felt like a cruel mockery. I drove home in a daze, the rain blurring the road ahead. Elsie arrived an hour later, her face flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. "Sorry I'm late," she said, avoiding my gaze. "The renovations took longer than expected." "Renovation?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But the studio was closed. There was a sign on the door. She hesitated, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "Oh, right. Well, they closed early. I went for a drink with some of the other potters." The lie hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that she was lying, but I didn't push it. I couldn't. I was afraid of what I might find. I retreated into myself, burying my suspicions beneath a facade of normalcy. I continued to cook her favorite meals, to tend to the garden, to pretend that everything was all right. But the knot of unease remained, a constant, gnawing presence. The truth, when it finally came, was far more devastating than I could have ever imagined. It arrived in the form of a small, unassuming package delivered to our door. Inside was a USB drive and a note, scrawled in an unfamiliar handwriting. "Barnaby, I think you should see this." My hands shook as I plugged the USB drive into my computer. A folder appeared, labeled simply Elsie. I clicked on it, my heart pounding in my chest. A series of photos filled the screen, each one a hammer blow to my soul. Elsie in the arms of another man. Elsie kissing him passionately. Elsie laughing, her eyes sparkling with a joy I hadn't seen in years. The man was tall, handsome, with a confident smile. I didn't recognize him. I scrolled through the photos, each one a fresh wave of nausea. They were taken in various locations: a restaurant, a park, a hotel room. The final photo was a selfie taken in what looked like Elsie's pottery studio, her arm draped around the man's neck, her face pressed against his. The caption read, "My happy place." I stared at the photos, numb with disbelief. Elsie, my Elsie, the woman I had loved and trusted for 20 years, had been betraying me. The pain was so intense, so all-consuming that I felt like I was drowning. I stumbled to the bathroom and vomited, the contents of my stomach mirroring the bile that had risen in my throat. When I finally emerged from the bathroom, I found Elsie standing in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Barnaby," she whispered. "I can explain," I said, my voice hoarse. "Explain what?" "Explain how you could do this to me. Explain how you could lie to me for months." She burst into tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she sobbed. It just happened," I repeated, incredulous. "You just happened to fall into bed with another man, you just happened to take photos of it. You just happened to lie to my face every single day." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was written all over her face. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Who is this man? His name is Alistair," she said, her voice barely audible. He's a potter. I met him at a workshop." "A potter, of course. The pottery studio, the late nights, the renovations, it all made sense now. It was all a lie, a carefully constructed web of deceit designed to hide her affair." "How long?" I asked, dreading the answer. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated again, her eyes filled with shame. "6 months," she whispered. "It started 6 months ago, 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal, of my life being a complete and utter sham." I felt a rage building inside me, a white-hot fury that threatened to consume me. I wanted to scream, to shout, to break things, but instead I remained eerily calm. "Get out," I said, my voice flat. "Get out of my house, Barnaby, please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can work through this. I love you, love me," I said, my voice laced with sarcasm. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have betrayed me. You wouldn't have lied to me." "I made a mistake," she cried. "A terrible mistake, but I can fix it, I promise." "It's too late, Elsie," I said, my voice cold. "It's over, get out." She stood there for a moment, her face a mask of despair, then turned and walked out of the house, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our life. The days that followed were a blur of pain and confusion. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I could barely function. I called my friend Crispin and told him everything. He was shocked, outraged on my behalf. "That two-faced witch," he exclaimed. "I always knew there was something shifty about her." Crispin stayed with me for a few days, offering support and companionship. He helped me contact a solicitor who advised me to file for divorce. The process was agonizing, a constant reminder of Elsie's betrayal. I had to gather financial documents, make decisions about dividing our assets, and face the grim reality that my marriage was over. I also had to confront the anger and resentment that had taken root inside me. I found myself thinking about Alistair, the man who had stolen my wife. I imagined confronting him, punching him, making him pay for the pain he had caused me. But I knew that violence wouldn't solve anything. It would only make me feel worse. Instead, I decided to focus on myself, on rebuilding my life. I started going to the gym, working out to release my pent-up anger. I took up painting, a hobby I had always wanted to try. I spent time with my friends, rediscovering the joy of their company. One evening, while I was scrolling through Elsie's social media, I know, it was a mistake. I stumbled upon Alistair's profile. He was a potter, as Elsie had said, and his work was quite impressive. I clicked on his website and saw that he was hosting a pottery workshop in a nearby town. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan that would allow me to confront Alistair without resorting to violence. I signed up for the workshop, using a fake name. I wanted to see him, to talk to him, to understand why he had done what he had done. The day of the workshop arrived, and I drove to the town, my heart pounding in my chest. I walked into the studio and saw Alistair standing at the front, demonstrating a technique on the pottery wheel. He was even more handsome in person, with piercing blue eyes and a confident demeanor. I took a seat at one of the pottery wheels and listened to Alistair's instructions. He was a good teacher, patient and encouraging. As the workshop progressed, I found myself actually enjoying the process of working with clay. It was therapeutic, a way to channel my emotions into something creative. During a break, I approached Alistair. "Excuse me," I said, my voice calm. "I'm a big fan of your work." He smiled. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate that." "I'm curious," I said. "What inspires you?" He paused, considering the question. "I'm inspired by beauty," he said. "By the beauty of nature, the beauty of human connection." "Human connection," I repeated, my voice tinged with sarcasm. Is that what you call it? He looked at me, puzzled. I'm not sure I understand. I think you do, I said. I know about you and Elsie. His face paled. Who are you? He asked, his voice barely audible. My name is Barnaby, I said. I'm Elsie's husband, or I was Elsie's husband. He stared at me, speechless. I didn't know, he stammered. I didn't know she was married. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You didn't know? She never mentioned me, never mentioned her 20-year marriage. He shook his head. She told me she was separated, he said. She told me she was going through a divorce. I stared at him, incredulous. She lied to you too, he nodded, his face filled with shame. I feel terrible, he said. I would never have gotten involved with her if I had known she was married. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw that he was telling the truth. He was a victim too, a pawn in Elsie's game. I believe you, I said, my voice softer now. But that doesn't change what happened. You still slept with my wife. You still broke up my marriage. I know, he said. And I'm sorry, I truly am. I stood there for a moment, considering my options. I could yell at him, punch him, make a scene, but what would that accomplish? It wouldn't bring back my marriage. It wouldn't erase the pain. Instead, I extended my hand. I accept your apology, I said, but I never want to see you again. He shook my hand, his grip firm. I understand, he said. I won't bother you again. I turned and walked out of the studio, leaving Alistair behind. I felt a sense of closure, a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in months. I had confronted him, I had told him how I felt, and I had moved on. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Elsie got the house, and I moved into a small apartment in the city. I continued to work at my job, to paint, to spend time with my friends. I started dating again, tentatively, cautiously. I was still scarred by Elsie's betrayal, but I was determined to find happiness again. One day I received a letter from Elsie. It was a long, rambling apology, filled with regret and remorse. She said that she had made a terrible mistake, that she missed me terribly, and that she would do anything to have me back. I read the letter, my heart aching with a mixture of sadness and anger. I knew that I could never forgive her, never trust her again. But I also knew that I couldn't hold on to the anger forever. It was poisoning me, preventing me from moving on. I wrote her a short, simple reply. I forgive you, Elsie, but I can never forget. I sealed the letter and mailed it, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally free, free from the pain, free from the anger, free from Elsie. I never saw Elsie again. I heard through mutual friends that she had moved to another country, started a new life. I hope she found happiness, but I don't dwell on it. I'm focused on my own happiness, on building a life that is filled with love, trust, and honesty. The rain has stopped now and the sun is shining through the clouds. I walk out into my garden, the air fresh and clean. I take a deep breath, feeling grateful for the simple things in life, the beauty of nature, the warmth of the sun, the love of my friends. I'm a survivor, a warrior, a man who has emerged from the ashes of betrayal stronger and more resilient than ever before. And to you, dear reader, who may be facing a similar storm in your own life, know this: you are not alone. You are stronger than you think. You will get through this, and one day the sun will shine again.